The peace of Christ be with you. This is a midweek reflection for Third Reformed on December 2nd. We have made it to the last month of this crazy year. But more importantly, in my book, we have made it to the season of Advent. Advent is my absolute favorite time in the church calendar. It's the 4 weeks before Christmas where we focus on waiting and watching, where we tune our hearts to wonder and awe. It's the time where we tell one more time the old story of the coming of Christ, the hope that it brings, and the hope that it provides for the future. And so it's fitting that the theme traditionally attached to the first week of Advent is hope. Now, if you're familiar with a church tradition that involves Advent, thinking maybe the lighting of candles in worship, you may remember that the 4 weeks have traditional themes attached to them of hope, peace, joy, and love. And hope is not just a theme for the first week of Advent. It's something that runs all throughout the story of Scripture and the life of faith. It's different than what you might call optimism. You may count yourself an optimist or a pessimist, a glass half full or glass half empty kind of a person. But hope is unique in that it is not anchored in any external factor in the world around us, even in the darkest and most dismal moments. Hope can remain because biblical hope is rooted in the person of God. And in this season, we remember God incarnate, and our hope is attached to the life, death, and resurrection of the person Jesus. In the biblical words that we translate as hope, there's a strong theme of waiting, watching, right? These classical hallmarks of Advent, where we remind ourselves that the world that we see all around us isn't all there is. And that even though we may not be able to envision it, there is a promise of a better future, a time when all things will be made whole, where all will be well, where all things will be reconciled back to God. When I think about that connection of hope and waiting, it reminds me of fly fishing, one of my favorite endeavors. And my favorite kind of fly fishing is swinging flies for steelhead. Now, that is an activity that is often described as seeking the fish of 1,000 casts. And I wouldn't be surprised if there have been some stretches over the years where I've made it over 1,000 casts without hooking up with a steelhead. But there's something beautiful about the activity. You're involved in it, you're casting, you're choosing where to put the fly. But once the cast is made, it's all about hope. You wait and you watch as that fly moves through the water. And even though you can't see fish moving below the surface, you trust that they are down there and that there is the possibility of finding a connection with it. So when it does come, there's a certain sense of exuberance and joy and exhilaration. It's a fulfillment of that hope, having waited and watched patiently. When it comes, it's electric. And it's that waiting and watching, that longing for connection with God, that is at the heart of Advent, where we slow down from all of the busyness and the activity around us. And we remember that even though we can't see God out there in the murky depths of the universe, or in the murky depths of our heart, we trust that God is there, and that there is the chance of connection, something electric and exhilarating. When it finds us, it is pure joy. And so I want to encourage you in this season of Advent, and especially in this first week of Advent, to reflect again. What is it that you're waiting for? What is it you're watching for? And what is your hope rooted in? This is a time to set aside all those distractions and remember once again the promise of God, that He is with us always, and that in our waiting and watching we carry the promise that we will be eternally with him. In just a second, right here, there'll be a link that you can click on. It's also in the description below this video, to a video, a word study on hope from the people at the Bible Project. They do a great job with these videos of explaining some of the biblical roots of these key themes of Advent and more broadly throughout Scripture. So each week in these midweek reflections, I'm going to link over to that. So I would encourage you to go watch their video on hope and then come back here, leave a comment in the comment section below this video on what stood out to you about what they had to say, or about what it is that you're waiting and watching for in this first week of Advent.